American poet John Bon Jovi once sang, "Shot to the heart and you're to blame. You give love a bad name." The 1980s saw the explosive expansion of the WWF into the internationally renowned company we know today. During this time, its legacy was built on the tan shoulders of two of wrestling's most recognizable names. This week, we're peeling back the curtain on one of wrestling's most explosive rivalries. We'll relive the glory, the betrayal, and the sheer spectacle of this feud. How two of wrestling's biggest personalities collided in and out of the ring. From tag team partners to bitter enemies, the saga of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. It defined an era, captivated millions, and left an indelible mark on sports entertainment. So adjust your headbands, snap it to a Slim Jim, and get ready to say your prayers and take your vitamins as we roll this one back with a rewind, brother. Yeah, sorry, I wish I didn't do that brother thing, before the music. Welcome to the Feud Rewind. I'm your host, Benza Lance. The legacy of Hogan vs. Savage serves as a reminder of wrestling's potential to create compelling narratives that resonate with audiences long after the final bell has rung. It stands as a high watermark in professional wrestling storytelling, one that performers today still strive to match. In many ways, this rivalry encapsulates what made the late 80s and early 90s WWF so special. It was a time of clearly defined heroes and villains, of storylines that stretched belief but never broke it, and of larger-than-life characters that became cultural icons. Before we dive into the heat of this rivalry, let's set the stage by introducing our two main players. First up, the immortal Hulk Hogan, arguably the face of American professional wrestling in the 1980s. With his 24-inch pythons, handlebar mustache, and signature red and yellow attire, Hogan was larger than life. His catchphrases like, "What you gonna do, brother?" and his finishing move, the leg drop, became iconic. Hogan's rise to superstardom coincided with the national expansion of the WWF, making him a household name and a pop cultural phenomenon. On the other side of the ring, we have the Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho, as we all know now, brought a different flavor to the wrestling world. Known for his raspy voice, colorful outfits, and intense promos, Savage was the perfect foil to Hogan's all-American hero persona. His technical wrestling ability, combined with his over-the-top character, made him stand out in a world of larger-than-life personalities. Both men had achieved significant success individually before their paths collided. Hogan had already headlined the first 3 WrestleManias, and was the company's top babyface. Savage, who had joined the WWF in 1985, quickly rose through the ranks, winning the IC championship and dazzling fans with his in-ring prowess. Their individual charisma and talent was undeniable, but it was their interaction, both as allies and as enemies, that would create wrestling magic. The stage was set for a relationship that would evolve from a tenuous partnership to one of the most memorable rivalries in sports entertainment history. As we move forward in our story, keep in mind that in the world of professional wrestling, the lines between reality and scripted entertainment often blur. The animosity between Hogan and Savage may have been exaggerated for the cameras, but the impact of their feud on the wrestling industry was very real indeed. Now, let's turn the clock back to 1987, a pivotal year that saw the seeds of both friendship and rivalry planted between our two superstars. The story begins at WrestleMania 3, one of the most significant events in wrestling history. While Hulk Hogan was busy body slamming Andre the Giant in the main event, Randy Savage was having a show-stealing match against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship. Savage lost the IC title that night, but his performance caught everyone's attention, including Hogan's. A slow face turn for Savage was beginning. Savage would win the King of the Ring tournament to become the Macho King. And it was at this point that his popularity, the Macho King's popularity, was rising to the point that Savage was being cheered by the majority of the fans, whether or not he was being a heel or a face. When Honky Tonk Man declared himself the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time, Savage began a mini-feud with him to get the title back, becoming a fan favorite in the process. To aid in Savage's face turn, the WWF began booking him against various heels, including King Kong Bundy and Killer Khan, with those matches taking place prior to his first match against Honky. On the October 3rd episode of Saturday Night's Main Event 12, Savage got his shot at the Honky Man and the IC Championship, The Hart Foundation would interrupt the match, getting Honky disqualified. In the ensuing beatdown, Miss Elizabeth ran back to the locker room to find somebody to help, ultimately finding Hulk Hogan, bringing him back out to the ring to help save Savage. Just when things looked their bleakest, the familiar strains of Real American filled the arena. Hulk Hogan rushed to the ring, clearing house and saving Macho. This moment of alliance was electric. As Hogan extended his hand to Savage, the crowd held its breath. Would the notoriously paranoid and intense Macho Man accept? In a moment that would shape WWF storylines for years to come, Savage shook Hogan's hand, and the Mega Powers were born. The formation of this super team was a masterstroke of booking. It united the company's top star, Hogan, with the rapidly rising Savage, creating a duo that seemed unstoppable. Their contrasting styles, Hogan's power and charisma versus Savage's technical skill and intensity, made them a formidable pair, both in and out of the ring. But there was a twist in this tale of testosterone and teamwork. Miss Elizabeth. As Savage's manager and real-life partner, Elizabeth added a layer of complexity to the Mega Powers dynamic. Her undeniable beauty and poise made her popular with the fans, including Hulk Hogan, which didn't sit well with the possessive Savage. To wit, a tournament was made to decide a new WWF Heavyweight Champion after Hogan lost the title to Andre the Giant on February 5th, 1988. Andre immediately surrendered the belt to Ted DiBiase. It was revealed that DiBiase had hired referee Dave Hebner's twin brother, Earl, to pretend to be Dave and give Hogan a bogus 3 count when Hogan's shoulders were clearly off the mat before the count of 3. Between the referee cheating Hogan, Andre forfeiting the title, and DiBiase's illegal attempt to buy it, this caused WWF President Jack Tunney to declare the championship vacant. Hogan and Andre were both given byes in the first round of the tournament, but fought to a double DQ in the quarterfinals. This had the side effect of giving Ted DiBiase a bye in the semifinals. Ultimately, Savage and DiBiase met in the final match of the tournament in the main event of WrestleMania 4. DiBiase did all that he could to take out Savage, including the constant interference of Andre, who was acting as DiBiase's second for this match. But DiBiase just couldn't keep Macho down. Savage eventually went to Miss Elizabeth, whispering something in her ear. She ran backstage as the fans were trying to figure out what was going on. A few minutes later, Miss Elizabeth re-emerged with Hogan. Andre and DiBiase seemed shocked by the turn of events. Savage was able to hit his diving elbow drop finisher and got the 3 count. After the match, Hogan, Savage, Elizabeth celebrated as a group. A few months later, with Hogan on a leave of absence from the WWF and Savage feuding with DiBiase over the title, DiBiase and Andre attacked Savage during an interview segment, prompting Savage to challenge the two to a tag team match against him and a partner of his choosing. Savage then revealed that his partner would be the returning Hogan, and that they would meet Andre and DiBiase at SummerSlam 1988. The Mega Powers' official televised debut match as a team was at SummerSlam. They went up against Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase in a match billed as the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks. Jesse Ventura, a longtime supporter of Savage's, but a longtime adversary of Hogan's, served as the referee for the match. The match didn't go as planned for the Mega Bucks. The Mega Powers took the early advantage over DiBiase. After Hogan attacked Andre the Giant, who was on the ring apron, the Mega Bucks were able to regain control. An all-out brawl ensues, and Andre knocked the Mega Powers out of the ring. Subsequently, Miss Elizabeth began arguing with Ventura, the referee, and ripped off her skirt to reveal a one-piece swimsuit. While the Mega Bucks were distracted, Savage climbed to the top rope and dropped the Macho elbow on DiBiase, followed by Hogan hitting the leg drop on him. As Hogan pinned DiBiase, Ventura, a villainous character aligned with the Mega Bucks, began a slow 3 count. As a result, Savage slammed Ventura's arm down for the 3rd time, indicating that Hogan and Savage had won the match. On the surface, Macho and Savage were the best of friends, the ultimate good guy team. But beneath the high fives and muscle poses, tensions were simmering. Savage's paranoia about Hogan's friendship with Elizabeth, combined with the Hulkster's ever-present spotlight, created a powder keg of egos just waiting to explode. Cracks in the Mega Powers' alliance began to show in 1988, slowly at first, then with increasing visibility. The catalyst? A mix of jealousy, misunderstanding, and the ever-present Miss Elizabeth. At the 1988 Survivor Series, Hogan and Savage captained a team that faced a 5-member squad headed by Big Boss Man and Akeem. You know Akeem as the one-man gang, who were now being billed as the Twin Towers. Hogan and Savage eventually won the match. During the post-match posing, Hogan again began acting a little too friendly towards Miss Elizabeth, visibly annoying Savage. In a post-match interview, pro-heel commentator Jesse Ventura interviewed Savage, playing up Savage's growing anger regarding Hogan's behavior towards Miss Elizabeth. The two had an uneasy friendship, particularly when it became obvious Hogan would act friendly and or protective towards Miss Elizabeth. On Saturday night's main event 17, Hogan was insistent on Miss Elizabeth appearing at ringside for his matches versus King Haku, Akeem, and Bad News Brown. In the latter instance, Miss Elizabeth was endangered by Akeem and his allies Slick and King Haku when Big Boss Man grabbed Miss Elizabeth and placed her in handcuffs. Before Boss Man could use his nightstick to strike Miss Elizabeth, Savage ran out and made the save. While Savage showed concern for Miss Elizabeth, he disregarded Hogan, who was still reeling from being attacked by the Boss Man and Akeem. Things came to a full boil on February 3, 1989, on NBC's primetime special, The Main Event 2, when the two wrestled the Twin Towers. During the match, Akeem threw Savage out of the ring. Savage was thrown into Miss Elizabeth, knocking her unconscious. Hogan saw what happened and carried Miss Elizabeth from the ring to the medical area. When Elizabeth was revived, she implored a distraught Hogan to return to the ring to help Savage, who had been left to fight the two gargantuans on his own for several minutes. Hogan eventually called for the tag, but Savage, who was furious with being abandoned during the match, slapped Hogan in the face. After some choice words to confuse Hogan, Savage took his World Championship belt and stormed back to the locker room. Hogan defeated the Twin Towers by himself. After the match, Hogan went to check on Miss Elizabeth. Savage also happened to be in the back, and we caught him mid-tirade, yelling to Miss Elizabeth that as world champion, he was tired of taking a back seat to both Hogan and Miss Elizabeth in the Mega Powers pecking order. Upon Hogan's arrival, Savage turned his frustrations to Hogan, accusing Hogan of trying to steal Miss Elizabeth from him and manipulate the belt away from Macho. Hogan implored Miss Elizabeth to try and talk some sense into Macho before Savage attacked Hogan by hitting him in the face with the title belt, sealing the end to their partnership and beginning this feud. In the weeks that followed, the tension escalated. Savage's promos became increasingly unhinged, accusing Hogan of lusting after Elizabeth and undermining him at every turn. Hogan, for his part, maintained his innocence, insisting he only had eyes for his Hulkamaniacs. The WWE capitalized on this real-life tension, weaving it into a compelling storyline that blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Fans were treated to a series of confrontations, near misses, and intense promos that built upon anticipation for the inevitable clash. One particularly memorable moment came when Savage, now fully embracing his heel turn, ambushed Hogan during a live TV interview. The attack was brutal, with Savage whipping Hogan with his belt and leaving the Hulkster a battered mess on the studio floor. As WrestleMania 5 approached, the wrestling world was abuzz with anticipation. The tagline for the event was "The Mega Powers Explode." Hogan vs. Savage for the WWF Championship was set as the main event, a fitting stage for the culmination of this epic rivalry. The build-up to this match was a masterclass in wrestling storytelling. It had all the elements of a classic feud: betrayal, jealousy, and a prize worth fighting for. But more than that, it represented a changing of the guard in the WWF. Savage's heel turn and subsequent rivalry with Hogan marked a new era of more complex, character-driven storylines in mainstream wrestling. April 2nd, 1989, Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, New Jersey, WrestleMania 5. The atmosphere was electric as fans packed the venue, eagerly anticipating the explosion of the Mega Powers. As pomp and circumstance blared through the speakers, Randy Savage made his way to the ring, adorned in his signature glittering robes, the WWF Championship belt secured around his waist. The Macho Man's intensity was palpable, his eyes wild with a mix of rage and determination. Then came the familiar opening riff of Real American. The crowd erupted as Hulk Hogan emerged, his trademark red and yellow gear glimmering under the lights. The Hulkster played to the fan, flexing his 24-inch pythons and cupping his ear to the thunderous Hogan chants. The bell rang and the match the fans had been waiting for finally begun. This wasn't just a wrestling match. It was a culmination of a year-long story, a battle of egos, and a clash of two of the biggest stars in the industry. Savage, the more technically proficient wrestler, took control early. He peppered Hogan with quick strikes and high-flying maneuvers, including his signature double axe handle from the top rope. Hogan, ever the resilient hero, absorbed the punishment, waiting for his moment to mount a comeback. The drama intensified when Miss Elizabeth, who had been remaining neutral leading up to this event, appeared at ringside. Both men noticed her presence, adding another layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. As the match progressed, Savage's frustrations grew. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't keep the Hulkster down. In a desperate move, he attempted his finisher, the flying elbow drop, not once, but 5 times in succession. But even this wasn't enough to put Hogan away. Then came the moment Hulkamaniacs had been waiting for. Hogan began to Hulk up, shaking off Savage's attacks in his trademark fashion. The crowd went wild as Hogan pointed at Savage, landed his big boot, and followed it up with the legendary leg drop. 1, 2, 3. The referee's hand hit the mat for the final count and the arena exploded. Hulk Hogan had defeated Randy Savage, reclaiming the WWF Championship and seemingly putting an end to this bitter rivalry. This match itself, while not a technical masterpiece, was a storytelling triumph. It perfectly encapsulated both men's characters, Savage's intensity and technique versus Hogan's never-say-die spirit and crowd-pleasing heroics. The bout lasted just over 17 minutes, but its impact would be felt for years to come. As Hogan celebrated his victory, hoisting the WWF Championship high, Savage retreated in defeat. The Mega Powers had officially exploded, and Hulkamania stood tall in the aftermath. The dust had barely settled from WrestleMania 5, but the rivalry between Hulk and Randy was far from over. Their feud would continue to simmer and occasionally boil over for years to come, taking on new dimensions and involving other superstars along the way. In the immediate aftermath of WrestleMania, Savage's character took a darker turn. Blaming Elizabeth for his loss, he verbally abused her on screen, leading to their on-screen separation. Elizabeth would be replaced by sensational Sherry. This added a new layer to the Hogan-Savage rivalry, with Hogan now positioning himself as Elizabeth's protector. Throughout 1989 and into 1990, Hogan and Savage continued to clash. Their encounters weren't limited to one-on-one matches, but often involved tag team bouts and multi-man melees. One notable moment came at SummerSlam 1989, where Hogan teamed with Brutus Beefcake to face Savage and Zeus, a crossover from the No Holds Barred Hogan movie. You don't remember that movie? No one else does either. Savage and Hogan would meet one last time for a WrestleMania 5 rematch on the February 23rd, 1990 edition of the Main Event 3. This time we would have heavyweight boxing champion James Buster Douglas as the special guest referee. Quick little side note, Mike Tyson was originally scheduled to be the referee, but due to his knockout title loss to Douglas just weeks earlier, this was obviously changed. Hogan would come out victorious yet again with Savage knocked out by Douglas post-match. For their WWF runs, that would be the end of the canonical timeline. However, this is the 90s, and as we know, both eventually would move to WCW by the middle of the 90s. This would reignite their rivalry, playing into the significant roles of the Monday Night Wars. For most of 94 and 95, Savage and Hogan had seemed to make amends and would often tag against the WCW establishment. However, things came to the ultimate head at Bash at the Beach on July 7th, 1986. Hogan came out seemingly to save Savage and Sting during their match with the Outsiders. The Outsiders being Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Hogan ended up double-crossing Savage and Sting, dropping the leg on Savage 3 times, and then forming the NWO. WCW decided to work Hogan and Savage's old real-life feud into this storyline, going as far as having Hogan state that if Savage was going to accuse him of causing his divorce from Miss Elizabeth, then he doesn't need someone as ungrateful as the Macho Man as a friend. Later that year, the former friends faced off at Halloween Havoc 1996 for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Savage almost had Hogan beat, but thanks to Ted DiBiase and the Giant, Hogan retained the title and the NWO brutally beat down Savage. Savage's ex-wife, Miss Elizabeth, who was aligned with the Four Horsemen at this time, begged Hogan to stop hurting Savage, who she still deeply cared about. She would then drape herself over Savage's unconscious body, trying to prevent any more beatings from happening. and was spray painted with the NWO logo alongside Savage. After taking a hiatus, Savage would pair with Sting as the neutral parties in the NWO vs WCW war, before eventually joining the NWO with Hogan and giving birth to the many spin-off factions of that group. Now, this would bring us to the end of our timeline for this week. We've journeyed through the formation of the Mega Powers, witnessed their explosive breakup, relived the drama of WrestleMania 5, and explored the lasting impact of their rivalry. This feud gave us iconic moments, quotable promos, and matches that still resonate with fans today. Throughout their careers, Hogan and Savage would oscillate between bitter enemies and uneasy allies. Their ability to convincingly play both sides of this relationship is a testament to their skills as performers and the genuine chemistry they had, both positive and negative. Even years after both had retired from active competition, their names remained linked in wrestling lore. Fans would debate their matches, analyze their promos, and speculate about the real-life drama behind the scenes. The Hogan-Savage rivalry had transcended the ring to become a cultural touchstone for an entire generation of wrestling fans. First and foremost, this rivalry demonstrated the power of long-term storytelling in wrestling. From the formation of the Mega Powers to their explosion and beyond, the Hogan-Savage saga played out over years, with twists and turns that kept fans engaged. This approach in narrative in wrestling, building slowly, adding layers of complexity, and paying off storylines over time, would become a blueprint for many feuds to come. The Hogan-Savage rivalry also showcased the importance of strong characters in wrestling. Both men had larger-than-life personas that were diametrically opposed. Hogan's all-American hero versus Savage's intense, unpredictable maverick. These clearly defined and contrasting characters made their conflicts feel more significant and personal, a lesson that continues to be applied in modern wrestling storylines. Moreover, this feud helped elevate the WWF Championship to new heights. While the title was already prestigious, the intensity of the Hogan-Savage rivalry and the story surrounding it made the championship feel more like the ultimate prize, something worth destroying friendships over. The rivalry also played a crucial role in the evolution of wrestling promos. Savage's intense, sometimes rambling interviews contrasted beautifully with Hogan's more straightforward, catchphrase-heavy style. Their verbal sparring matches set a new standard for emotional intensity in wrestling promos. In terms of match quality, while neither Hogan nor Savage were known for technical wrestling classics, their encounters were always memorable due to the story they told in the ring. Their matches demonstrate that with the right build-up and storyline, a match could captivate audiences without relying solely on athletic spots. The Hogan-Savage feud also highlighted the potential of integrating personal relationships into storylines. The inclusion of Miss Elizabeth in a narrative added depth and a relatability to the conflict, a tactic that has been used countless times since in wrestling storytelling. Even today, decades later, the Hogan-Savage rivalry is often cited as one of the greatest in wrestling history. It's studied in wrestling schools, referenced in documentaries, and fondly remembered by fans who lived through the era. Newer fans discover it through YouTube, the WWE Network, or stateside Peacock, marveling at the intensity and commitment both men brought to their roles. What made Hogan-Savage so special ultimately wasn't just the in-ring action or the stellar promos. It was the perfect storm of the larger-than-life personalities, compelling storytelling, and the undeniable chemistry between two of wrestling's biggest stars. Their rivalry reflected the best of what professional wrestling can be, a blend of athleticism, theatricality, and pure, unadulterated drama. As we look at today's wrestling landscape, we can still see the influence of this legendary feud. The emphasis on long-term storytelling, the integration of personal elements into rivalries, and the importance of strong, distinct characters. All of these owe a debt to Hogan and Savage. So the next time you hear someone ask, "What you gonna do, brother?" or proudly declare that they're the cream of the crop, remember, you're not just hearing a catchphrase. You're experiencing the echoes of one of the greatest rivalries in sports entertainment history. And with that brings us to the end of the rewind for the week. I appreciate you spending some time with me this week to relive some classic wrestling drama. You know to do that follow, like, subscribe, and share gimmick. Lastly, we're on all the socials as Feud Rewind. Fellow fan, I'm your host, Ben Zalance, and I'll see you next week when we roll it back with another feud to rewind.